two things before we get started. I will do the announcement for this either tomorrow or the day after. I just want to give enough time for enough people to leave their comments, which, just in case you don't know, we've got a signed Jimmy Walker book here to give away. And all I asked you guys to do was, at the bottom, this little footnote, it says, size is everything, Jimmy Walker, a footballing glove story. Someone can come up with something more funny than that. I think that's quite a good play on words. Then you'll be in a chance of winning this book. I'm going to let that run. That's on Don't put it on this video, though. Yesterday's video. I'm going to let that run for 2 or 3 more days. And I just wanted to say as well, remember Jeff the dog, and so many of you kindly donated to help him get his operation on his ear. He's brilliant. He's brilliant. We saw him at the weekend. Zippy had a really good play with him, and he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much indeed. What I'll do is I'll get... We're running around so much, I didn't get a good photo. I'll get a good photo of the pair of them together. Zippy is big now, by the way. Big dog. We'll get him involved soon. Although the patrons saw him the other day when he was up at the breakfast table. He's not that big that he sits at the breakfast table and eats breakfast, you understand. But anyway, right, today what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about Graham Potter, Jarrod Bowen, and Mohammed Kudus. And it was really something that Gio said to me. And it was about... We were talking about Kudus when we were doing our patron player ratings. And Gio was speaking about having the right manager for a creative player like Kudus, who, once again, against Everton, produced by far and away the most dribbles of anyone in the West Ham team. He's up there in the Premier League's top dribblers this season. He has been pretty much consistently since he joined West Ham, irrespective of whether the team is playing well or not. He's up there in the literally the top take-ons in Europe. He's a special player. He's a talented player, and you know, it's very, very few like him. I don't know if you remember, just before we signed him, we were really close to signing Doku, who plays for Man City. We didn't get him. Kudus was the second choice. I mean, I think a lot of people forget this. We got the right one. We got the best one. I'm very, very certain about that, by the way. And I think what we're losing now is the end products. We saw last season. Look at last season. He's got tons of end product. Unfortunately, what he's had so far this season as a manager in Lopetegui, who clearly didn't get the best out of him. And now, dare I say, a manager in Graham Potter who's not getting the best out of him. Although the difference in terms of how much effort he's putting in for the two managers is stark. He's putting in a real shift for Potter at the moment. He wasn't doing that under Lopetegui. They had a falling out, didn't they? They had a half-time spat and all the rest of it. Anyway, not been a great season. But Gio said something to me, and he was talking about managers, having the right manager for a player. And he spoke about, he said it's like Dimitri Payet. And it was a throwaway comment from him. I thought, do you know what? He's absolutely right. Dimitri Payet was the right player at the right time under the right manager because Bilic just let him play. Not only that, if he was also letting him play, and Bilic would use a lot of strikers, he would always use Lanzini as well. So you had Lanzini and you had Payet, and you felt the team was built to get the best out of him. But he had a manager that would allow him to do that. And I was sort of thinking about it. And how important is it to have the right manager at the right time? So I was actually, to be fair, I was thinking about it whilst Joe was talking. Boring, isn't he, sometimes? And I was just thinking, yeah, do you know what? What would happen? What happened with Bilic and Kudus? I started thinking about that. Then I started thinking about, well, what about Payet? What about Payet under Moyes? What about Payet under Lopetegui? What about Payet under Potter? And I'm obviously keen not to make a rash judgment on Potter for all the reasons that I've explained in the previous 2 or 3 videos. I think we've got to wait until next season, so I'm not going to start caveating it all again. But from what we're seeing now, and I'll tell you what we're seeing now, right? So if you go on to Football 3, I think it's Football 365, I've got the statistics just behind me. You can put in your own sort of bespoke dates for the Premier League, and then press enter and it will tell you who's top, who's bottom, all that sort of stuff. So going from Graham Potter's first game, so all I did was I put it in there from 2 days before his first game. I'm obviously not talking about, I think it was, first game was Aston Villa FA Cup. I did it like a day after that. So what we've got is 9 games for Graham Potter and a Premier League table, but some teams like Leicester, at the point I did this, have played 8 games. Liverpool played 10 games. Liverpool are top. I'm not gonna go through it. I'm not gonna go every team, but basically West Ham are 15th, right? So Graham Potter is pretty much Graham Potter's West Ham is pretty much where West Ham are now. I'm going to give you the stats: 9 games, 3 wins, 2 losses, 4 draws. No, it's not right. 2 draws, 4 losses. 9 goals scored in 9 games, 10 goals conceded. Now, that is a goal difference of -1. That is a massive, massive improvement on what the defence was doing last season under David Moyes. Last season we conceded 73 goals, which was the record ever goals conceded in the Premier League for West Ham. Last season, the worst defence West Ham have ever had in the Premier League era, which is, what, a quarter of a century? That was last season. That's how bad the defence was. We were going so badly under Lopetegui, we were looking like we might get very near to that. Maybe even, I'm not sure doing worse is beating it, but you know what I mean. We were looking at a similar number. Massive, huge minus goal difference. Potter's come in. That's steady. Let's call it breaking even. Do you know what I mean? -1 after 9 games. Brilliant. Well done. The goals scored is an issue because that's 9 goals scored in 9 games. You better be keeping clean sheets if you're doing that, because it's the only way you're going to win games. And so I would argue we're exactly where we should be. What I would also say is that position there is exactly, well, it's not exactly, but a 1 place difference between where Lopetegui was. He was just doing it differently. We were scoring more goals, basically. He was conceding an awful lot more. That's the squeaky chair again, by the way. I know what you're thinking. There it is. Which gives us a bit of a Mohammed Kudus shaped problem, and Jarrod Bowen. Both of those players work their arse off. Both really, really playing for the manager. Everything you hear about Potter in terms of how he gets on with everyone is positive. Everyone likes him. Nice guy, but by all accounts, nice guy. Do you know what? Let me just tell you about my phone. My phone is actually on Do Not Disturb. I don't know why it pings up. For some reason, it decides to give, even though I've got it on Do Not Disturb, it seems to want to give me email notifications. I've no idea why. I do mute it. I'm not completely unprofessional, by the way. So, I think they're both working really, really hard. They're playing for the manager. He's a nice guy. They like him. We didn't play just 2 attackers. I don't call attackers just people that play up front. I call people that are attack-minded. What do they want to do? What's their ethos? When they get on the pitch, what are they going to do? They're going to look up. They're going to look to pass forward. They're going to travel with a ball. So I would suggest the inclusion of Lucas Paqueta was an attack-minded one, right? Obviously started maybe behind the front 2 in the first half. Second half, he almost played more as a number 8. But he's an attack-minded player. I still think that, so let's say we had 3 attack-minded players. Still a bit meagre for my particular taste, it has to be said. But look, it's done its job, and it's got the defence working well. We don't need the safety first approach anymore, and I'll tell you why. Because sometimes I don't need to know why Graham Potter has tried to fix his defence. That much is bloody obvious. But I think he now needs to fix the attack. In fact, I would argue that has become more important now. And nothing to do with points, nothing to do with all that stuff that I've just read out about minus goal difference, plus goal difference, or anything else. There's 2 other things he really has to take into account, because it is his job. He is the West Ham manager, so this is part of it. He's got to make sure that his attackers don't get down in the dumps about playing in this horrendous system. And I'm sorry to say that. Great system for defenders. I think last 2 games, Max Kilman has, you go and look at his numbers, his clearances, headed clearances, duels won, interceptions, brilliant. Right? Lovely for a defender. For an attacker, it's crap. Before the game against Everton, Potter had, well, do your maths, Potter had obviously, excuse me, a bit under the weather actually. Potter had played 8 league games. And West Ham in those 8 games had the worst attack, basically. We'd had less shots on target and less shots than anyone else in the league. All of them, including, you probably remember me saying it last week, included Leicester, Ipswich, Southampton. We were the worst. In this game, we had 1 more shot on target. We had 3 shots on target. We only had 7 shots in total. We're not getting better. We're having less shots. Now, don't get me wrong. And this is why you've got to separate what I'm saying to some of the good stuff. But I'm only saying this now because I've already discussed the good stuff. I've spent 2 days saying it. I think a draw at Goodison Park, particularly given all the context, David Moyes last season at Goodison, I think it's good. I think it's a good result. But I think in terms of attacking, he's got some other things that he's got to take into account. Number one, I think he's got to take into account that it's season ticket renewal time, and he can't compare this to anything that he has had before in his career, be it Ostersons, Swansea, Chelsea, Brighton. West Ham are a very, very different club. We're a club that's been asked to expand its fan base very quickly, very, very quickly. And we need... Look, if you're going to play boring football, and 7 shots is boring football, right? 7 shots is boring football. If you're going to play boring football, you better make sure you're winning. It really is as simple as that. If you're not going to do that, you better make sure you're entertaining. You better make sure you're doing it at season ticket renewal time as well. That's the first thing. More importantly than that, he's got to keep his players interested. He has got to keep Bowen interested. He's got to keep Kudus interested. Do they look interested? Well, they look like they're putting in the effort. Do they look like they're going to score? No, they don't. Bowen hasn't played, unless you can tell me otherwise, I can't think that Bowen's played in his favoured position. I would consider his favoured position to be on the right-hand side, the right wing, maybe a little bit inside, maybe, a little bit more inverted, an old-fashioned inside right if you want. I know Soufal's not playing at right back, in front of Soufal, working that flank, coming in, getting goals. I can't think he's played there under Potter. Maybe Potter's system doesn't allow it. But we hear that Potter's flexible. I think he needs to be a little bit flexible. You might disagree who West Ham's best player is, right? But I think judging by the last 5 odd years, it's Jarrod Bowen, right? Jarrod Bowen's West Ham's best player. You've got to put your best player in the best position. I don't think Jarrod Bowen's got much more performances like he's having. I thought he was lucky to get in the England squad. Not because of his ability, but because how he has been playing for West Ham. I do not believe for a moment that Graham Potter's getting the best out of Jarrod Bowen. And I don't think he's getting the best out of Mohammed Kudus. And that's a problem. That is a problem. Because they are so good. And you start to think back to what Gio said about Payet having the right manager. I think Bowen will take it for longer than Kudus will. But I don't think you can ask them to take that indefinitely. You've got the whole situation with Evan Ferguson. I've been talking for 13 minutes. We'll discuss that another day. It's a subject in itself, isn't it? But it seemed like an unwillingness to play a centre-forward. You have to think that will change, hopefully, at some point. And as I mentioned in yesterday's video, you look at Murray, you look at Welbeck, it sort of suggests that he will start playing a forward more. But at the moment, it's not really helping them. West Ham are safe. West Ham are very, very safe. And he's clearly ring-fenced it. He's parked the bus. And he's saying, you shall not pass. Okay, that's fine. But he does have other commitments. He does have other things, other factors. And training may well be fun. I hear training is fun. Training can be as fun as it wants. But those forward players, they're going to want goals. They're going to want assists. Kudus looks a million miles away from a goal and assist at the moment. He really does. Bowen's that good. He's picking up assists. He's picking up goals. But he is not involved. And we're not seeing they're isolated. Too many times we're seeing an attack and there's nobody there. I think I just want Graham Potter now, for the remainder of the season, I would just like him to maybe play one more attacker. And unless I'm wrong, unless this is what we're getting next season, then that's a different conversation. If this is what we're getting next season, and actually this is the way he's going to play, and we're just going to always be defensive, then we have a very, very different conversation to have. But if he's spoken about layers, he's spoken about building foundations. See, the funny thing about building foundations, I don't know what you think when someone says that. I always use the analogy. I always think of the analogy as a house, a brick. I always think of foundations as bricks, the footings. And so here's what I don't understand. If to move back to away from the brick building analogy for the moment, if the foundations are footballing, and actually what you're saying is we're building these foundations, and next season we're going to add more to it, and we're going to be more expansive, and we're going to play more attackers, then surely isn't that taking some of the foundations out? Isn't that like removing, it's like Jenga, isn't it? I think that's, if what we're doing is training ourselves to defend with what in essence is, let's be kind and call it 7 defensive-minded players. Is it really foundations if next season you're going to have 5 defensive-minded players, and then there's almost no point in doing that, is there? Particularly when we're safe in the league. So I think with that in mind, if you are going to change things up next season, that's what I'm assuming is going to happen, because we're clearly not going to play like that next season. Then I'm sort of working on the assumption really that that's the case. Then probably now is the time just to demonstrate and just to give a little glimmer of hope to your forward players and to your attackers, and to say to Bowen, to say to Kudus. Even selecting Ferguson is not necessarily saying to Ferguson you're going to be here next season. I think it's clear to one and all he won't be. But it's saying to the next striker, this is what you'll be doing. If you're going, that's a hard sell, isn't it? I don't think we'd get Jonathan David. I don't think there's any. Why would he? As I've mentioned before, why would he come to West Ham? But let's say he was. Let's say Jonathan David did want to come to West Ham, or we were one of his options. That would be a hard sell, wouldn't it? Say, are you going to want to play in that team? No, I don't. Thank you. No, you don't even play centre forward, mate. Why am I joining you? So I think there's that. So I think it's now time to give a little bit of a glimmer of hope to people that might be coming in next season, people that are already here, maybe even the youngsters like Luis Guilherme or somebody like that, just to look at it and say, okay, we're gonna add the next layer on, because the foundations, the defence looks good. I don't want to talk about foundations anymore, because I can't stop thinking about Jenga now. By the way, I am very good at Jenga. I'm very good at Jenga. I don't know if I want to say I'm undefeated, but I'm pretty close to being undefeated at Jenga. I'm magnificent, honestly. So I know my Jenga, right? I know my Jenga, and I'm looking at this. I'm looking at West Ham like a game of Jenga at the moment, and I shouldn't be. So let's. I hope starting from next week. No, it's not next week, is it? Bloody hell, it's got 2 weeks. 2 weeks of nothing. I mean, he can't just sit back and defend against Wolves, can he? So let's start getting those shots output up. Let's start giving something for the players to get behind. And if you start looking, and just imagine it in your mind, imagine Mohammed Kudus in that team, that Slaven Bilic team last season at Upton Park. That's what we need. A little bit of that. Anyway, right. Don't forget the comments for the book are on yesterday's video. Don't leave them here, because it's not like they won't count. I'm reading them all. I'll be marking them off on the other one, and putting little highlighters around them and stuff like that, and clicking them and stuff like that. So if you want to win the book, make sure you comment on yesterday's video. Right, I'll catch you later.